All right, welcome, focused learners. Let's jump right into today's explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here. And hey, if you're gearing up for your exams, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're demystifying the ultimate rulebook of the world's largest democracy, the Indian Constitution. You can really think of this document as the ultimate contract between you, the citizen, and the state. It lays out exactly what you're owed, what you owe in return, and how this whole massive system is supposed to run. We're going to break all of this down from scratch, totally beginner style, and we'll be looking at some fantastic original documents to make sure you truly grasp these concepts and absolutely ace those exams. So, here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, the vision. 2, citizen protections. 3, citizen responsibilities. 4, guiding the government. And finally, number 5, the 1976 mini-constitution.
Okay, starting off with Section 1, the vision. The preamble. To really understand the rules of the game, we first have to understand the ultimate goal of the nation, right? Take a close look at this original, beautifully framed text from November 26, 1949. This is the preamble. It acts as the grand introduction to the Constitution. Notice those big, bold, red letters right in the middle? That officially establishes India as a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Now, for a beginner, let's unpack that. Sovereign just means India is totally independent. Socialist and secular were actually added a bit later, which we're definitely going to talk about, but basically they mean wealth should be shared equitably and all religions are respected equally. And democratic republic, that just means the people choose their leaders and the head of state is elected, not a king.
Reading further down that very same document, we hit the 4 core ideals secured for all citizens. Let's define these clearly, because honestly, these are guaranteed exam points. Justice isn't just about what happens in a courtroom. It means social, economic, and political fairness across the board. Liberty guarantees your freedom of thought, expression, and belief. Equality ensures every single person has the exact same status and opportunities, no matter their background. And fraternity, well, that's about promoting a spirit of brotherhood to assure both the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. This right here is the philosophical bedrock of India.
Moving on to Section 2, Citizen Protections, Fundamental Rights.
All right, consider this your ultimate study guide to the 6 specific fundamental rights that literally form the basis of individual protection in this democracy. These guarantee your personal freedom and dignity, keeping you from being overpowered by the state. First up, the right to equality, meaning everyone is treated the exact same before the law. Second, the right to freedom, which is huge. It guarantees your right to speak your mind, express yourself, and move around freely. Third, the right against exploitation, strictly prohibiting terrible practices like forced labor and child labor. Fourth, the right to freedom of religion, meaning you can practice and preach any faith you choose. Fifth, cultural and educational rights, protecting minority groups so they can preserve their unique cultures and run their own schools. And finally, the 6th one, the right to constitutional remedies.
Now, I want you to pause for a second and just think critically. Having this great list of rights is amazing, but what happens if these fundamental rights are violated? What if the government or some institution just decides to ignore them? Because let's face it, a shield is totally useless if you can't actually pick it up and use it to defend yourself, right? So the crucial point here is that 6th right we just mentioned, the right to constitutional remedies. This is the mechanism that gives the other 5 rights their teeth. It allows any citizen to approach the courts directly, even the absolute highest courts in the land, if their fundamental rights are violated. These rights are strictly enforceable by the courts. If your right is breached, the court can legally force the state to fix it. This single fact is a total game changer. It makes the entire democratic system functional and very real for everyday people.
Which brings us to Section 3, Citizen Responsibilities, Fundamental Duties.
But hey, a contract works both ways, doesn't it? Take a look directly at the text of Article 51A, under Part IVA. It explicitly details the fundamental duties. Now, unlike the fundamental rights, which were baked in from the very beginning, these duties were actually introduced later on. They act as a reminder to citizens that along with enjoying all those freedoms, they have strict responsibilities towards society. Just look at how detailed this list is, going from letter A all the way down the page to K. It formally codifies exactly what it means to be a responsible, disciplined citizen right into the law.
I know that legal text can be incredibly dense, so let's distill it into these essential, super easy to memorize bullet points so you don't get overwhelmed while you're studying. What does Article 51A actually ask of you? Well, it asks you to respect the Constitution, the national flag, and the national anthem. You must protect the sovereignty and unity of India. You're duty-bound to promote harmony and brotherhood among all people. You've got to protect the natural environment, so forests, lakes, and wildlife. You are required to safeguard public property and totally avoid violence. And you must value and preserve the rich cultural heritage of the nation.
All right, Section 4, Guiding the Government. Directive Principles of State Policy. So now we know what citizens get and what they must do. But what instructions does the government actually follow? Look closely at Part 4 here, Directive Principles of State Policy, or DSPS. These are the essential guidelines handed to the government to establish social and economic democracy. If you read the text under Article 38 and 39 here, you can see the state is directed to promote the welfare of the people, secure a social order with justice, minimize inequalities in income, and ensure equal pay for equal work for both men and women. It also guides them to provide an adequate livelihood, promote public health, and protect natural resources. Basically, think of this as the master blueprint for the government to build a successful welfare state.
Now get your notes ready because understanding this next difference is a major aha moment for your exam prep. This is hands down the most common point of confusion for beginners. What is the actual difference between fundamental rights and directive principles? Here is the absolute key. Fundamental rights are legally enforceable by the courts. If the government denies your right to free speech, you can sue them and win. Directive principles, however, are not legally enforceable. If the government hasn't yet achieved equal pay for all citizens, you can't just take them to court to force them to do it overnight. However, they are fundamental guidelines. The government is morally and politically obligated to apply these principles whenever they are making new laws.
Okay, last but not least, Section 5, the 1976 Mini-Constitution, the 42nd Amendment.
The documents we just looked at haven't remained entirely static over the years. To understand this, we've got to look at the historical timeline. Between 1975 and 1977, India was under a period known as the Emergency, declared by then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. During this time, civil liberties were heavily curtailed. Right in the middle of this intense political climate, in 1976, the government enacted the 42nd Amendment. It was such a massive, sweeping change to the rulebook that it became popularly known as the Mini-Constitution.
Let's break down exactly what changed in that 1976 Mini-Constitution. Remember those words we saw in the preamble earlier? Socialist and secular, along with unity and integrity, were actually added right here. It shifted power dynamics significantly by trying to make directive principles stronger than fundamental rights, and it restricted the court's ability to review constitutional amendments. It also added that entire list of fundamental duties, Article 51A, that we just reviewed. It even extended Parliament's tenure from 5 to 6 years. Now, objectively speaking, the government at the time argued these changes were absolutely necessary to ensure stability and clarify the nation's goals. On the flip side, critics strongly viewed this amendment as an attempt to consolidate executive power and weaken democratic checks and balances. But regardless of the perspective, its impact on the Constitution was undeniably profound.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've covered the foundational vision, your powerful rights, your vital duties, the government's roadmap, and how history shaped the whole shebang. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. The Constitution isn't just some old piece of paper you study for a test. How does the daily balance of your enforceable rights, your national duties, and the government's welfare guidelines actively impact your life today? Think critically about how this complex constitutional contract shapes the world you walk out into every single morning. Thank you so much for joining me. Keep studying hard, good luck on those exams, and I'll see you in the next explainer.